2 weeks ago, we asked a simple question on this channel. Why is everyone buying Sire? Thousands of you watched, and the comment section filled up with ownership reports, which is exactly what we asked for. But inside those comments, one theme kept coming back. A theme that almost no review on this platform ever talks about. One of you, a working bassist who gigs 2 to 3 times every week, wrote that his V7 preamp died within a year. He replaced the bass with a V3, and that preamp died too. Another of you called the battery compartment nearly impossible to open and said the words every fan thread avoids. Sire preamps have known issues. And a third viewer, who owns a V7, a V8, a ZES3, and a P5R, admitted something remarkable. He gigs his active Sires in passive mode permanently because he likes them better that way. So today we are doing what the demos will not do. We are talking about the famous Sire preamp as it behaves in the real world, not in a shop. What actually goes wrong, how often, what it costs you, and, most importantly, the 3 basses in Sire's own catalog that dodge the problem completely, including one that your comments seem to love more than any review I have ever seen. Here is the plan. Part 1. The promise. What the Marcus Heritage preamp actually is, why it made the brand famous, and why every demo you have ever watched leans on it. Part 2. The problem. The documented failure patterns, the battery economics nobody explains to beginners, and the honest statistics question. Is this a real defect pattern or just the internet being the internet? Part 3. The passive escape. 3 current Sire models with no preamp at all, same necks, same build quality, nothing to die on a Saturday night. And Part 4, if you already own an active Sire, the 3-step insurance plan that costs almost nothing and means a dead preamp will never end a gig for you. And stay for Part 3 even if you love active basses, because the middle bass of those 3 is the one your own comments crowned king, a model that has never had a famous review, barely appears in demos, and might quietly be the best instrument Sire builds. A quick honest note before we start. Sire did not pay for this video, nobody sent us anything, and the links below are plain product links with no affiliate games. This video will also criticize a product we recommended 2 weeks ago with the same face. That is the whole point of this channel. And because buying right is a method, not a list, I built the complete buyer's guide, every goldmine and money trap from this channel as one honest map. It is linked in the description. Now let's get into it. Part 1. The promise. To be fair to Sire, we have to start with why this preamp made them famous. The Marcus Heritage 3 is an 18-volt active circuit running on 2 9-volt batteries, and that voltage number matters. Double the headroom of the typical 9-volt budget preamp means the sound stays clean and huge even when you dig in hard. You get a 3-band equalizer, bass, middle, and treble, and the middle band is sweepable, meaning you can choose which frequencies you are boosting or cutting. On a bass that costs $400, that is a recording studio channel strip bolted onto your instrument. It is the reason a Sire demo can chase the sound of a vintage jazz bass, a modern funk machine, and a pick-driven rock bass inside the same video. When that circuit works, and to be clear, for most owners it works for years, it is the best value electronics package in the budget world, and nothing we say in the next 10 minutes changes that. But here is what the demos never mention, because a demo lasts 15 minutes and ownership lasts years. Every feature you just heard lives or dies with a thin chain of components. 2 batteries, a battery compartment, a circuit board, and an output jack that switches the whole system on the moment you plug in a cable. And that chain is where the real-world reports start. Part 2. The problem. Let's sort the complaints from our comments and from the owner forums into 3 drawers, from mildest to most expensive. Drawer 1. The battery economics. An active bass drains its batteries whenever a cable is plugged in. Even if you are not playing, even if the volume is at 0. Leave a cable in the jack overnight a few times, and your fresh batteries are gone. 2 9-volt batteries cost real money every few months, and here is the beginner trap. When the batteries sag slowly, the bass does not simply stop. It starts sounding thin, distorted, weak, and a new player will blame their fingers, their amp, or their talent before they suspect the electronics. If you learned on a passive instrument, you have never had to think like this. Drawer 2. The design complaints. The battery compartment on several models is documented by owners as genuinely difficult to open, which turns a 30-second battery swap into a screwdriver operation, potentially in the dark, on a stage between songs. And the control layout got criticism in our own comments from a man who owns 4 Sires. Stacked knobs and a crowded layout means some adjustments genuinely need 2 hands, which is fine on a couch and terrible mid-song. Drawer 3, the expensive one, outright failure. A preamp that dies. Our commenter's story, a V7 preamp dead within a year, replaced by a V3 whose preamp also died, is not the average experience. And honesty requires saying that loudly. Millions of these instruments are out there, and most owners never see a failure. But the pattern exists in enough independent reports, on Talk Bass, on Reddit, in our comments, that pretending it is zero would be marketing, not reviewing. The honest framing is this. It is a lottery with good odds, the same as Sire's quality control lottery we covered last time. Most tickets win. But unlike sharp fret ends, which you notice in the first week while return windows are open, a preamp usually dies months or years in, long after returns and often outside warranty patience. That asymmetry is why it deserves its own video. And since almost nobody describes it, here is what a dying preamp actually sounds like, so you recognize it before it embarrasses you. Stage 1 is subtle. The bass loses a little sparkle, the highs sound dull, and boosting the treble seems to do less than it used to. Stage 2. The sound gets thin and slightly fuzzy, like a very cheap distortion pedal you never bought, especially on hard-plucked notes. Stage 3. Crackles, dropouts, or a volume that jumps when you wiggle the cable. And stage 4 is silence. Here is the test that costs nothing. The moment your Sire sounds strange, flip it to passive mode. If the bass suddenly sounds healthy again, your problem lives in the preamp or its batteries, not in your amp, not in your cable, and not in your hands. That one flip has saved more gigs and more repair bills than any other move an active bass owner can learn. And before the fan comments arrive, yes, there is a 4th drawer, and it is Sire's best defense. Most active Sire V models carry a small toggle switch that flips the bass into passive mode, bypassing the preamp entirely. Volume and tone keep working, the batteries become irrelevant, and the bass keeps making sound. It is the single most underrated feature on these instruments. It is the reason a dead preamp is an inconvenience rather than a catastrophe. And remember our 4 Sire owner from the intro. He uses exactly this switch, not as an emergency measure, but as his permanent sound. Hold that thought. Part 3. The passive escape. Because here is the plot twist this video has been building toward. The smartest answer to the preamp question might be inside Sire's own catalog. 3 current models ship with no preamp at all. No batteries, no circuit board, no failure mode. Just pickups, a volume knob, a tone knob, and wire. And you lose almost none of what makes a Sire, because the necks, the rolled fretboard edges, the fretwork, the build, all of it stays. Model 1, the V5. We said it 2 weeks ago, and the argument has only gotten stronger. The V5 might be the best pure value in the entire catalog. It is the classic jazz bass recipe, 2 single-coil pickups, the slim fast neck, all of Sire's build quality, with a fully passive circuit. Fewer components to pay for means more instrument per dollar, and a sound that has been the backbone of soul, funk, and pop records for 60 years. One of our commenters compared his V5 directly to a Mexican-built Fender and called it, and I am translating politely, at least its equal. That is a $400 bass being weighed against an $800 one and holding. Model 2, and this is the king your comments crowned, the P5R. If you have never heard of it, that is precisely the point. The P5R has no viral demos, no famous reviews, and it kept appearing in our comment section like a secret handshake. The owner of 5 Sires listed it first, and the 4 Sire owner called it his go-to bass, the one he cannot put down. Here is what it actually is: a vintage-style precision bass, North American alder body, roasted maple neck. And that roasting is a real process, heat treatment that dries and stabilizes the wood the way decades of natural aging would. A rosewood fingerboard, a bone nut, and one fat vintage voice split pickup with passive volume and tone. That is the recipe of the instruments that built Motown and half of every record collection on Earth, executed with Sire's modern factory precision at a fraction of what the famous version costs. The precision bass sound is the most recorded bass sound in history, and it needs no preamp, because engineers have been shaping it at the desk since before active electronics existed. If the V7 is Sire's crowd pleaser, the P5R is the one the owners quietly keep. And because we owe you the comparison, put the P5R next to the Fender Player Precision, the bass it is obviously aiming at. The Fender gives you the headstock, the resale value, and a dealer on every corner. The Sire gives you the roasted neck the Fender does not have at this price, the rolled edges, the bone nut, and change from the price difference that buys a proper setup, a strap, and a year of strings. Blind, through a band mix, separating them is a party trick very few players can perform. With eyes open, you are choosing between a badge and a specification sheet, and this channel will always tell you to buy the specification sheet unless the badge genuinely makes you play more. And Model 3, the U5, the short scale. 30-inch scale instead of 34, which means less reach, less weight, less fight. And we have praised short scales on this channel before for beginners, for guitarists switching to bass, and for anyone whose shoulders have opinions. The U5 is fully passive, with a P&J pickup pair, separate volumes, and a master tone. And owners report the tone control has a genuinely wide usable range for a passive circuit. It hangs light, it sounds warm and articulate, and there is simply nothing on it that can die between soundcheck and the last song. Now, the honest comparison, because a recommendation without trade-offs, is an advertisement. What do you actually give up going passive? Flexibility. The active V7 can chase 20 different sounds. A P5R makes essentially one sound, extremely well. If your gig demands funk slap in one song and dub lows in the next, the preamp earns its batteries, and this video changes nothing for you. Passive output is also a touch lower, so you will lean on your amp's gain a little more. That is the whole cost. What you get back, nothing to fail, nothing to feed, one less thing between your hands and the speaker, and a sound that decades of records have already proven. For a beginner, we would argue the passive route is not the compromise, it is the head start, because you learn what your fingers sound like before you learn what a mid-boost sounds like. Part 4. If you already own an active Sire, do not sell it, because the fix costs almost nothing. Step 1. Find the passive toggle right now tonight and practice flipping it with the bass on your knee in the dark, because on stage is the wrong place to search for a switch the size of a grain of rice. Know what your bass sounds like in passive mode and set your amp so that sound is usable. That is your parachute, and our commenter who gigs in passive mode full-time is proof the parachute flies. Step 2. The battery ritual. Unplug the cable every single time you put the bass down, no exceptions, and change both batteries on a schedule, twice a year on fixed dates, not when the bass starts sounding strange. Write the date on the battery with a marker like technicians do. Fresh batteries cost less than one drink. A dead preamp mid-set costs your nerves and possibly your reputation. And step 3, for the worst case, if the preamp does die outside warranty, you are not stuck. The V-Series is one of the most modded platforms in the bass world, and proven aftermarket preamps drop into that cavity. One of our own commenters swapped a respected aftermarket unit into his 9-year-old V7 and reports it plays on happily. That repair costs about $100 in parts if you solder, double that with a technician, and at the end you own a genuinely upgraded instrument. A dead Sire preamp is an annoyance. It is not a funeral. Before we wrap up, run this through the 3 questions from the buyer's guide, because the framework matters more than any brand. Question 1. Can you hear the problem you are solving? If your active Sire works and you love the sound, this video is not an instruction to panic. It is an instruction to learn your passive switch. Question 2. Real fault or sold feeling? The preamp anxiety some forum threads sell is bigger than the real failure rate. The honest response is insurance, not fear. And question 3, have you done the cheap things first? Fresh batteries, on a schedule, solve the majority of what gets blamed on the circuit. Adults check the batteries before they blame the board. So here is the honest verdict. The Sire preamp is a genuine engineering achievement at the price, and it is also a lottery ticket with very good odds and a known worst case. If you want maximum sounds per dollar and you accept the battery ritual, buy the active one, learn the passive switch, and gig without fear. If you want maximum instrument per dollar with zero electronic anxiety, the passive V5 and the P5R are arguably the two smartest purchases in the entire Sire catalog. And the U5 is the friendliest doorway into bass this brand makes. The comments called it before we did. The quiet king of the lineup wears no batteries. Buy the bass your hands and ears can verify, not the one the demo needed a preamp to sell you. Tell me in the comments, has an active bass ever died on you at the worst possible moment? What was the bass, and what did you do mid-set? And to the P5R owners who started all of this. Was I fair to your king? If you disagree with anything in this video, the comment section is exactly where that belongs, because your ownership reports are worth more than every demo on this platform. Everything is linked in the description, including the buyer's guide with the complete map of gold mines and money traps. Subscribe for honest, no-hype truth about bass gear, and I would be genuinely glad to have you along for the ride.